Hi, everybody. This is Ross, and I'm here with my colleague, Sally, and together we are your counseling team. And today we're going to talk to you about novelty. So why are we talking to you about that? Well, we're familiar with some of the research on workplace satisfaction, looking at employees that report high levels of satisfaction with their work, and then looking at employees that report low levels of satisfaction with their work. And what that research shows is there are a couple factors that have a big impact on that level of enjoyment in terms of what you're doing day to day. And that is, one of the big three is novelty. An example of a really low novelty environment might be like working on an assembly line in the same place in the assembly line. So maybe just screwing on 5 bolts to a wheel of a car. And that's what you do all day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and you do that all year, extremely low novelty environment. A high novelty environment would be something like, well, in part, it's why I like to be a therapist. Every person is unique. And so the folks I meet with bring novelty into my office. Even though I'm around the same 4 walls, there's a different story, a different personality with me each hour. So this research would apply to students as well. I mean, this is your work, being a full-time student. And so a challenge right now with COVID is, because of lockdown and now going on for about a year, we've been thrust into a really low novelty environment compared to what we're used to. We hear students talk about this regularly. It's like every day seems the same. It's COVID time, meaning their time doesn't seem to exist. One thing just comes into the next. It's all the same 4 walls, same screen for everything, and I think what they're really telling us is, without saying it, this is an extremely low novelty environment, and most are becoming symptomatic because of it. Anything from just feeling really bored to, feeling kind of depressed and anxious, to trying to give themselves novelty in ways that cause other problems, So this is one I can relate to, like going to the fridge and, eating sweets and, eating high stim foods, that really taste and feel different than just a typical lunch, Some of that's fine, of course, but, too much causes problems. And so today we wanted to give you, hopefully you're recognizing some of this in yourself, and really our task is to give you words to describe it, so that you have a little more choice in terms of how you work with it. And so, Sally, you had some great ideas, even from your own personal experience, about how to introduce novelty every day. Even in this circumstance we're in.
Yeah, even in these circumstances where we're in restricted environments that we might not be used to at all. And so finding ways to have stimulation in one's environment where that was naturally occurring before, now we have to be a little more intentional about that. Otherwise, like you said, Ross, we end up feeling depressed. I've worked with students who really have low motivation because everything just feels the same, or there's monotony. And so I'll work with those students about how to then create that novelty, get some stimulation in their environment that then gives them some energy. Because we're naturally built to be seeking out new things. We're kind of learning machines in that way. And so what I've done for myself, the big thing is just being outdoors and getting outside. And I know we've talked in the past on our previous videos about getting outside, but getting outside and maybe getting into a different environment, not just my own neighborhood. but walking in a new place, or taking my car and driving to a park in a totally different neighborhood, like during my lunch hour, so I can take a walk there. Also, just thinking about other things for students, for all of you to consider at home, is maybe it's trying new foods, new spices, some new dish, trying different recipes that you haven't done before, doing a change in your routine every day. What might that look like in terms of when you might take a break to play with your kids, if having kids at home, walking your dog at a different time of day. Also, doing things like maybe even trying new activities, like new craft activities or new games. I think that's why we've seen this upturn, and suddenly, everybody's talking about baking and making sourdough during COVID times. It's like trying something new. For myself, I was never really into drawing and coloring, but I've added that into the evening to relax, and I'm really enjoying it. I've never done it before, and it's just a lovely pastime. I'll do it for like 30 minutes in the evening. So to think about what's some new craft or just something new you can try in that way, trying new games with your family, and meaning games like not online games, because we're spending so much time on the computer with Zoom and other ways of connecting with people, but like getting old-fashioned board games. And bored, not like I'm bored, right? But board, like it's a literal cardboard and there are pieces, or card games. That will get you out of your boredom of COVID. Another thing to consider is maybe changing up how you communicate with people, because we're spending so much time online right now. Going to some maybe old-fashioned ways of communicating with people. Instead of texting a friend, how about you write them a card and put a stamp on it and put it in the mail? Or call them on the phone, on your phone, and have a voice conversation rather than a text or email conversation. Another fun one that I actually read about recently that I've been trying is we can stimulate our brains and kind of get into a different alert state and different kind of consciousness by just simply using our non-dominant hand. That's a way to introduce novelty and kind of some newness to our daily routine. So if you're right-handed, try using your left hand for simple tasks like just eating, brushing your teeth, doing the dishes, cleaning up something. That just the fact that you're using your non-dominant hand for daily activities actually wakes up and stimulates your brain in a different way, because your brain is actually having to process differently by using that non-dominant hand. And so that just something that simple kind of creates some novelty and just new stimulation in your day.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I love all those suggestions, and I hear in common with so many of them, it's stimulation is so important. The sensory stimulation and changing that, the profile, of the sensory stimulation is important.
Yeah, and kind of changing and consciously changing your external environment. And those can be really healthy ways to create stimulation. Versus the kind of less helpful, less healthy ways that you were mentioning earlier, Ross, or I think you might have mentioned, of sometimes we humans can run the risk of falling into, using a drug-induced state to get that novelty, or to just create a different experience. I just want to feel different. So I'm going to drink a little more than I would, or I'm going to, smoke some pot and maybe do that more often than I typically would. It's like those, when we use those drugs mindfully and intentionally, that can be okay. But if it moves into this abuse where we're using it just to get a different feeling, to kind of escape the monotony of our environment, then that it risks kind of creating some dependency and maybe addiction that's not going to be so healthy. So you doing these other things to change the environment rather than our experience of the environment, I think is a really important message.
Yeah.
Something for folks to consider.
Yeah, so thanks for listening. I encourage you to try incorporate some of this into your life in a creative way. And, certainly if you feel like I'm needing more than just this advice, I need some kind of a customized set of solutions, consider emailing us at counseling@spscc.edu. That's counseling@spscc.edu. And you can just request a schedule with either Sally or I, and we can talk with you more one-on-one. Thanks, everybody.
Take good care.